Welcome to Black People History, where prominent Black people throughout history are showcased. This episode will cover Black leaders who are known and maybe not well known. The definition of leader is a person who leads or commands a group, organization, or country. So what's in a leader? A Black leader? Is it how they speak, what they wear, how they carry themselves, or what they speak about? Leaders come in many forms, from presidents who have fought for change to those who have started rebellions for freedom. A leader is undoubtedly someone who spearheads any movement, socially, politically, mentally, spiritually, or even physically. Through history, there have been many great Black leaders. This episode will shed light on Black leaders globally and give you information on how and why they are important and significant people in history, our history. I'll be discussing several individuals: A. Philip Randolph, Harriet Tubman, Nat Turner, Barack Obama, Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, Kofi Annan, and Oliver Tambo. Enjoy. Asa Philip Randolph, also known as A. Philip Randolph, was a leader in multiple movements for change in America. He led and organized Black people in socialist political parties, the American Labor Movement, and the Civil Rights Movement. He was born April 15, 1889 in Crescent City, Florida, but moved to New York City to attend City College of New York at night while working during the day. He unionized African American workers and even produced a magazine called The Messenger to demand higher wages for the common man, which would later be called the Black worker. Later founding the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, which eventually became the first African American labor union, which he was also the presiding president. Randolph's prominence as an organizer had become so influential that he persuaded President Roosevelt to issue Executive Order 8802 on June 25, 1941, barring discrimination in defense industries and federal bureaucracies, and he also persuaded President Harry Truman to issue the Executive Order 9981 banning segregation in the armed forces. Randolph helped create the Fair Employment Practices Committee and the League for Nonviolent Civil Disobedience Against Military Segregation. In 1963, Randolph organized over 200,000 people to march on Washington for jobs and freedom and to demonstrate support for civil rights policies for Blacks. A few years later, he founded the A. Philip Randolph Institute for leaders of the community to study what causes poverty and what steps could be taken to solve poverty in the Black community.
All of their rights.
Harriet Tubman, born Arminita Ross, was born in 1822 and was leader of the Underground Railroad, which helped Black slaves escape to freedom. She was one of the leading abolitionists who led many to freedom. Born into slavery in Maryland, she escaped for freedom in 1849. Then risked her life to lead hundreds from slave plantations to freedom through a network of routes and safe houses. Because of the fugitive slave laws in 1850, Tubman rerouted the Underground Railroad to Canada, where slavery was prohibited. Harriet Tubman earned the nickname of Moses for her leadership and willingness to save those by any means necessary. Tubman also worked as a spy for the Union Army during the Civil War. During the Civil War, Harriet Tubman was the first woman to lead an armed expedition in the war, which liberated more than 700 slaves in South Carolina. After the Civil War, Tubman devoted her life to the poor, elderly, and those who were previously slaves. In April of 2016, the U.S. Treasury announced it would replace Andrew Jackson with Harriet Tubman as the new face of the $20 bill. Even after her death, she continues to inspire many Americans fighting for equality and rights. She was even buried with military honor. Nat Turner was a preacher who was formerly a slave who made history as the leader of the bloodiest slave riots in America, which took place in Virginia. Nat Turner and his associates started a revolt against and also killing their white slave owners. Many years after this event, Turner has risen to the status of a hero. Nat Turner is often used as an example of blacks standing up against white oppression, even if the cost is their life. Barack Obama, full name Barack Hussein Obama II, is one of the greatest leaders of the 21st century. Barack Obama inspired so many to do great, and that change can and will happen if you choose for that change to happen. As the 44th and the first black president in America, he helped show black people that anything is possible, even being president of a nation which once enslaved blacks. Barack Obama previously served as a senator for Illinois. After graduating from Columbia University, Barack Obama worked as a community organizer where he worked in social services to help impoverished urban communities in Chicago's South Side. Even after graduating Harvard Law School, Barack Obama turned down $100,000 salaries at law firms in order to return to Chicago and work for a small firm specializing in civil rights. Barack Obama spent his time at the law firm defending the poor, the less fortunate, and the marginalized members of society in housing and employment discrimination cases. Barack Obama also taught law at the University of Chicago Law School and also did a local voter registration drive, registering thousands of black voters in Chicago. Barack Obama also wrote an autobiography where he states that he was able to get legislation passed which gave low-income families tax breaks, expanded healthcare services for uninsured children, and a law which required law enforcement to keep track of the race of the driver that was stopped in order to decrease racial profiling. Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009, less than a year after he won the 2008 presidency. Obama signed many substantial bills to help less fortunate and impoverished citizens, like the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Barack Obama passed good legislation for Americans and also stopped and dismantled entities who were against America. Barack Obama believes that education is a means of getting ahead and that life should be lived to help and serve others. Barack Obama is a leader for black people.
This election had many firsts,
all people,
and many stories that will be told for generations.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was a leader who brought change to South Africa, his African continent, and also on a global scale. Nelson Mandela was a South African political leader, revolutionary, political leader, philanthropist, and president of South Africa. While in the position as president, he focused on reform of institutionalized racism. Before Nelson Mandela's presidency in South Africa, he was sentenced to life in prison for attempting to overthrow the state, allegedly, but served 27 years of his sentence because of domestic and international outcry for his freedom. 4 years after his release from prison in 1994, he was able to win the presidency in South Africa. Nelson Mandela emphasized race relations and human rights for all people. Nelson Mandela focused on fighting poverty and HIV/AIDS through his charitable organization named after him called the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Known for his willingness to bring people together through democracy and social justice, he garnered more than 250 honors, which include the Nobel Peace Prize. Nelson Mandela is described as the father of a nation and is known globally as an iconic figure for blacks everywhere. Despite all the adversity Nelson Mandela faced throughout his life, he was able to lead his country into a better tomorrow. and show the world that anything is possible with good intentions and a good heart.
It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people.
Desmond Tutu is a black South African leader known for his cleric and theologian work for human rights and anti-apartheid work which fought for black equality. Desmond Tutu served as the Johannesburg Bishop from 1985 until 1986 and the Cape Town Archbishop from 1986 until 1996. Desmond Tutu took an active role in dismantling segregation and the white minority rule in Africa. Serving as the General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, Desmond Tutu was a prominent activist in the anti-apartheid movement. As an activist, Desmond Tutu promoted non-violent protests in order to cause change, while also seeking the implementation of women as priests and even fought for gay rights. Desmond Tutu won the Nobel Peace Prize for his activism and involvement in the anti-apartheid movement. Desmond Tutu advocated for a system of education, equal rights for all, the abolishment of South Africa's passport laws, and eliminating forced deportation from South Africa to the so-called homelands. As one of the world's most prominent black spiritual leaders, he drew attention to apartheid and racial discrimination in Africa. To this day, Desmond Tutu continues to shed light on social injustice and other humanitarian issues. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. A quote from Desmond Tutu. Kofi Annan was a black leader who was the first African to head the United Nations. Kofi Annan is from Ghana and was a diplomat serving as the 7th Secretary General of the United Nations. Kofi Annan was a leading propagandist in making peace in hostile countries where there was no peace. Kofi Annan had a hand at persuading Washington to give monies to countries who were owed and promised money by the United Nations. Kofi Annan was an international civil servant working for the United Nations who was outspoken about the major problems of the unjust world economy and human rights for all, no matter creed or color. Later, after his tenure as United Nations chief, Kofi Annan was appointed as the United Nations Arab League diplomat to Syria in an attempt to end civil war taking place there. Kofi Annan developed a 6-point plan for peace to defuse the conflicts and create a solution to peace. Kofi Annan was a champion for human rights and an influential black leader for equality. Oliver Tambo, full name Oliver Reginald Kazana Tambo, is a black leader of the African National Congress. Oliver Tambo was a wise, kind-hearted, and thoughtful individual who strived for civil rights in Africa. Oliver Tambo founded and organized the first ever black law firm in South Africa with the help of Nelson Mandela. Living in exile because of the governmental authority against him, Oliver Tambo would later return to South Africa advocating for human rights. Oliver Tambo studied law and saw the legal practice as a way to dismantle segregation supported by the state. Oliver Tambo sought to disassemble the caste system implemented in the native black community by the white oppressive governmental ruling body. Oliver Tambo received support from America for the struggles of black people and organized protests and boycotts to demonstrate blacks' need for equal rights and opportunity.
Transferred to a country of all South Africa, of all races and creeds. That is inescapable.
These were just a few of the black people in history whose leadership changed black people's perspectives, circumstances, and situations for the better. Stay tuned for the next episode where black artists in history will be covered. Thank you. Stay blessed, stay safe, be inspired, and never give up on your dream.